Hello and welcome to Good Enough Chats. My name's Dan Bauscher and I'm the host and producer of the show. But before we jump into this quick episode, I want to give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about in this conversation. So for this chat, I'm joined by Gary Lewis. Gary lives in Kingston upon Thames, is in his early 50s and is going to talk about how he spent his adult life struggling with anxiety, self-criticism and a pretty persistent sense of frustration. Ultimately, that led to him eventually being diagnosed with ADHD. But what he's going to talk about is the journey that he's been on before he got to that diagnosis. So how different he felt. He was disorganized at school, restless at work, easily overwhelmed, and often getting frustrated with himself for not fitting the mold. He'll talk about the things that led to him being diagnosed or seeking diagnosis, and the path that set him on since, where he now refers to himself as unapologetically neurodiverse. It's really open. There's some really interesting ideas that come through there, and he also brings out some of my story and my experiences too. I hope you find this helpful. I believe you will. It's a really interesting conversation. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Hi, Gary. How are you doing?
I would say I'm an 8 out of 10 today, Dan.
Oh, that's a solid start to the day.
It's good. This has obviously been in the calendar. I've been intrepidly looking forward to it. But off the back of our previous conversations, I know it's a safe space.
Awesome.
And, and it's World Copywriters Day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so me and my cohort get to be celebrated.
Quickly scrolls onto LinkedIn to see posts about copywriting.
No, I can't see it.
No, nothing.
No, it might be some about M-dashes and stuff, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to say I'm probably a 7. I've done a run this morning. I've done the dog walk. The autumn sun shines out, which means it's slightly awkward because partly I'm kind of thinking, well, do I go branded t-shirt or not? Because it's warm enough that I don't need a hoodie, but it's not quite cool enough that I can just get away with a t-shirt.
Layers are always the way forward.
Indeed. So, Gary, for the benefit of our audience, please, could you introduce yourself? Could you give us your full name, where you live, what you do for a living, although we've had a little hint about that already, whereabouts in the country you live, and for the curveball question, looking at that rack of vinyl behind you, there's a very, very rapid house fire, and you've only got time to pull one of them out. What is it?
Oh, it's easy. Do you want me to answer that now, or
you do the order that you want? I wasn't expecting it to be easy.
Well, someone actually asked me that very question recently, randomly, and it would be the Tame Impala box set. I can't remember the album, purple cover, looks kind of 80s retro. But the reason I bought it because there's a Soulwax remix of Let It Happen or Make It Happen. And that's the only way I could get it. And it is about £100. But that is my go-to tune. And yeah.
I've got to say that album is called Currents.
That's the one. Enough promotion for them.
Yeah.
Let's get back to me.
Nice.
I'm Gary Stephen Lewis. I live in Kingston upon Thames, Greater London or Surrey. It's still a slightly hot potato in some circles. I'm a copywriter. I consider myself to be of senior status. And I've been doing it for about 14 years. 2 of those were transitioning from a career in education to building a portfolio, and then proper paid work, about 12 years ago.
Nice. I have to say, sidebar on the Soulwax reference there. Not many people get this, but the only reason I listened to Soulwax in the first place around the time they released Too Many DJs was because they're Belgian, and my favourite band of all time is Belgian, and it is these guys, Deus.
Ah, nice.
Incredible. So I've gone on down many a rabbit holes, exploring alternative Belgian music, and there's there's a lot of it out there, and some of it is slightly more accessible than others.
Yeah, for such a small provincial area, they're actually quite musically strong. I mean, yeah, Solwax, Deus. I can't remember any more, but I know they had like their own kind of new wave scene, which fed into kind of dance music and techno and stuff. So, yeah. Oh, Belgian, yeah, Hoover, the Hoover sound, like hard rave sound from the 90s. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just throw in Kiss My Jazz and Gore Slut as two side projects of Deus.
Dare you?
Peter Swoon, Moondog Jr. Right, now we really will draw a line under it. So, Gary, as you know, each of these conversations is always based around the same 5 questions, and they take us wherever they take us. But the point that I always like to start off with is just, can you explain to our listeners and viewers why you've decided to share your lived experiences of mental health here with us today?
Short answer is, even with the amount of commentary, amazing work, charities, individuals that are working in this space and putting it front and center, it still feels disjointed. It still feels, especially if you look at the stats around suicide and men every year, that it's not a cohesive enough kind of either platform or narrative. And as part of my journey, which I suppose we'll get to, having that platform now more than ever, I think there's almost depends on the individual, a responsibility to use your experience, if you're comfortable, to educate, bring awareness to others. And if just one person listens and thinks, right, okay, that resonates with me, and I'm going to go and find a resource like the Samaritans, or if I give some advice, say talk to a friend or a family member that you can trust to have an open conversation with, then go do it where they might not have before. So that's the biggest, clearest reason.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And this is the reason I started doing these, is because I felt an acute absence of the normalization of men talking about mental health when I was at my lowest ebb. And I think if I kind of think of this as a funnel, and at the bottom is a guy who's getting the help that they need, and in the funnel there are lots of different options for the kind of things that person might need to do. What there isn't is, before anybody's got into a funnel, there isn't enough of that conversation right at the top that says it's okay. Now, some people's situations will need a lot more than that conversation, but I'm convinced that if more guys were willing to talk openly about how they were feeling, and more men were better at listening in an active way to when their mates are saying, or brothers or fathers or sons are saying these things, that funnel could suddenly be a lot less cluttered with people. And that's the kind of the view that has kind of characterized all of this stuff. So I completely agree with you that if it helps one person to realize there are positive things that they can do to help their own circumstances, then it's job done. And I don't, as with all of the guests on these, I don't know the details of your story, but from the sort of top level stuff that you have told me, I know that this is going to be helpful for other people to hear. So thank you for coming on and doing it, mate. Appreciate it.
That's okay. There's a lot to unpick and unpack.
Yeah. We'll do that with the question after this one. So we've kind of set the kind of the high level reason why you're here, but how has your last week been? Let's calibrate it. How have you been over the last week?
It's been, I'd like to say it's been consistent in terms of mood and everything else. I love the freelance life, and it gives me the freedom to be a hands-on parent because we both work out of necessity, but also because my wife's got a great career as a Senko. Maybe more on that. But maintaining my personal energy and professional energy can be draining at times. And if you factor in other things, which we may talk about, is my ADHD. I've started a new medication recently that has kind of stirred the pot on a physiological level. There's the kind of ups and downs and waiting of contacting people, connecting, lots of social energy. I do a lot of networking as well that goes into it. So there's always like a frisson of opportunity and excitement. But on the flip side is when maybe a recruiter or someone else contacts you and says, oh, there's a project coming up, and then they don't message you for 3-4 days. The anxiety starts to creep in.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how strong a wall of resilience you've got around you. You're only human, and if you're on your own in this situation as a freelancer or one-man band, it's really hard to maintain that level of positivity and resilience all the time. It's humanly impossible, right? So in short, emotionally up and down. I do genuinely believe that I've got some optimism, and everything that I'm doing will pay off at some point. Whether it's meeting the right people, having the right conversation, dropping a funny comment in somewhere on LinkedIn that leads to an introduction that leads to X, Y, and Z. So it's having that one eye on a possible future. And I think going back to ADHD, that's something that I've not had before because everything's been in the moment. So I'm starting to feel like, yes, okay, there are external forces against me. But actually, as I put in posts and talk to people, I've just got to widen my lane. That's the phrase I come up with. I refuse to be crushed because I spent a long time anxious, frustrated, angry at the world for not knowing what I wanted to do. And then when I landed on this career properly 12 years ago, I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to be forced to do anything else. But what it means is I have to think differently. I have to be more, whatever's needed. So it's an interesting time to be doing what I'm doing and being me.
Yeah. I can absolutely relate as well to the freelance life and peaks and troughs. And if anybody tells you don't take it personally, I don't think they've been self-employed as a freelancer. Yeah, quite. It is personal because it's you that's selling yourself and your services and your experience. And if you get ghosted, if people say no, and you're already feeling like things are getting on top of you, it's going to have that consequence. So I'm really pleased that you're keeping your pecker up, as it were, and that you're still kind of fighting this with optimism. I mean, full disclosure, and this conversation's not about me, but I, like most of the last 12 months, have been pretty shonky on the business front. I've had HMRC rebates 2 years in a row, thankfully, because that's helped to get me through a bit of a hole. But something sort of seems to have clicked with me in the last few weeks, and I'm feeling different about it, even though not a lot has, in the real world actually changed. Just feeling a bit different about it, and I can say it out loud now because it's not just been a couple of days, it's been a couple of weeks or so. So
can I ask you, Dan, how did you recognize that? Because I think what we're talking about, if it's about talking to someone else about your feelings as a man or the complexities of life, or just feeling snowed under and everything's shit. How did you tap into that? How did you recognize that, there's something positive going on?
Um, I
And I'm not
practice,
interviewing you, by the way.
no, I practice what I preach. Um, I when someone asks me how I'm feeling, I tell them honestly, and that gives you an amazing opportunity to articulate and work through the things that have been buzzing around your head,
Yeah.
and probably bothering you. Sometimes you're aware of what's bothering, sometimes you're not. So I have leaned into talking quite openly about it with mates, with sort of work partners, and that enables you to get other people's perspective as well. And if you're willing
Agreed.
to hear that, then it can sometimes, it's not necessarily one conversation, it's probably the cumulative effect of lots of conversations and suddenly kind of spotting trends in what people are saying, going, oh.
And it kind of, there's empathy needed, right? There's empathy needed for yourself, and if you've got the right people around you, whether that's friends or family or colleagues, it's a huge part in either picking the right people, or recognizing in them that they care and being able to be a bit vulnerable, I suppose, if you're not used to talking about it. If you're a kind of crunch point where you're aware and you recognize it, and you don't want to go down the phoning someone route, Samaritans, etc. Then it needs people. Yeah, you need to recognize the empathy in yourself and those around you, and that's tough because everyone's a bit guarded and everyone's got a kind of persona online as well. There's a real conflict there.
Yeah, and I would say, to the point that we were discussing earlier on in this conversation about that funnel, and not enough guys being seen to talk about this stuff before they need to even get into the funnel. It's the experience of talking about it that has kept me out of that funnel quite a few times. Not always. It's not 100% foolproof, but being able to spot something before it becomes a big problem is priceless. And you can only do that if you are talking to other people about it. If you're trying to work it all out in your head and you're trying to fix it without ever bouncing that off somebody else, or getting sometimes an opposing view, sometimes a supportive view, you are on
Just a different view.
just a different perspective, just another set of eyes and ears, same thing.
Otherwise you just wind up, you can live in your head rent free and have the same conversations over and over. But being reflective, I think, is a skill. You can learn it. If you're in a business or organization, undoubtedly there's going to be a well-being program of some sort. Do some meditation, go for a walk, do some yoga, whatever. And I think that's good for the body, but for the mind, it needs a little bit more. But all those resources are there, and I'd say it's just willingness, really. I mean, on the work front, I was just thinking, and the question I'm going to ask you in a sec is, when I worked in corporate up until last year, redundancy, their business groups were brilliant. But I mean, such a big company, very scattered though. But I managed to work out which ones were kind of right for me to put some energy into. So I got involved with men's mental health initiatives internally. Me and my then line manager, shout out to Adam Downs, tried to get a platform going within the business. I mean, so busy, but I organised Movember event. I organised a speaker to come in, Kyle from Boys Get Sad Too, fashion range. So what it did give me, even though the work was work, but the culture was great, and it did give me an opportunity, and this is before I'd even been diagnosed, an opportunity internally to talk about those kind of feelings and where I've been, where I'm heading, because there was a receptive audience. As I say, we're talking about a platform. So, in your kind of journey as a comms expert, you've worked in some pretty big places. What did it look like then, and what do you think it looks like now in the workplace culture? That kind of support or visibility?
That's a really good question. And the honest answer is, on the second point, I don't have any lived experience to kind of
fair enough.
validate that, how it looks today. From the outside looking in, it would appear to be more supportive, more open. But we all know that can be
smoke and mirrors,
sticking plaster, and sometimes just playing the PR game. Do I feel like there were employee assistance programs, and if you've never needed to use one of those in crisis, it's not the experience. If your first point of introduction is that crisis, it's it's efficient, but you suddenly realize that it lacks warmth.
It exists.
Yeah, it exists. It performs a very functional role, but actually realizing how functional it was when I was in a state of high emotion really grated.
Press 1 for a breakdown. Press 2 to get time off and speak to HR.
Yeah, it was.
The triage was yes, third party, fourth party, fifth party.
I think, and this is it's a really, really interesting area, because here I am saying, if you're struggling with your mental health, it doesn't matter if you're self-employed, employed, small business, megacorp, whatever. We need to do stuff to destigmatize that and break that down. And I think I say that knowing that I would have been, unless I'd got to that point of crisis, that I would have been exactly the person that would not have opened up about it. Necessity got to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I was kind of able to take a stand back and go, this isn't going quite the right way. I need to go and talk to somebody in my line management about what's going on here. I would have felt the absolute weight and burden of that stigma. What would it have done for my role? Would it have impeded my career? Would it have got me out of a job? All of those things would have weighed really heavily. So I realized that I'm kind of coming at this version of me who's been through that, is coming at this, making quite a big ask of other blokes who are not feeling brilliant to do something that I don't know that I would have had the confidence to do. I'd have the confidence to do it now because I've been through it and I know how important it is, and I've experienced that. But going from not talking about it at all to walking up to your boss or HR,
yeah, and they may be going through something as well. You never know. But you're right. I mean, we can't retrofit our life experience, or even our thoughts. So yeah, I think there is infrastructure there. There is advice there. But as I said at the top of the call, it still feels disjointed. I think I read a headline or something somewhere about a recommendation for a ministry of men to help solve the crisis, and obviously that's going to throw up a ton of gender debates, etc. But as an issue for society, there's no kind of structure or governance. The NHS is kind of breaking point anyway. For mental health, we saw that after the pandemic. For physical things like obesity and cancer, and these are all societal problems that are rooted in lived experiences, in families, societies, communities. And I'm not going to open up too much of a can of worms, but maybe there's a stronger advocacy for some kind of formal educational program or piece, either in secondary school, start at primary school. It's very hard to change the curriculum. I've been there, and historical stats. Boys fall behind girls. Literacy rate is low. Power of reading. So many things, either gender ascribed or not, that could be introduced but aren't, because we're obviously geared for SATs and Ofsted and all those kind of lovely government things that tick boxes. But I think more and more it needs to be tackled not reactively, which is kind of what we're talking about, is finding the courage to you find and use the resources that are out there. But actually, what can we do to prevent this from happening at a young age, or even at a teenage age?
It's as much a cultural thing as anything else, isn't it? It's the way that boys are brought up, the everything that's going on around toxic masculinity at the moment.
Yeah,
that's the next generation's challenge to unpick that, and how that manifests itself. But I think there is I think we need, as men, to embrace the idea of community. And I don't mean that's necessarily on a macro level, but I do think if more of us are spending time with other guys doing things that we like doing, speed crocheting, running.
Oh, that's you that's crochet bombing in the post office, but the boxes, red boxes.
Yeah, whatever it is that you want, that you do, that brings you, I don't know, that calmness, that enjoyment, that and fostering more of those kind of environments. I think it's almost it's on a micro level, isn't it? So if you are
100%.
a let's say if you are a competitive crocheter and you happen to be in your mid-30s and into death metal, that's quite unusual. But I bet you there are other people that also like crocheting very quickly that are in their mid-30s. Some of them might have similar musical tastes, not exactly, but there's a thing. There's the foundation there of a thing that if you could meet other people that like doing this kind of thing in their own time, how much better would it be for you to be able to chat to those people on a regular basis, right?
Oh, 100%. And I've got to pull my brain back from trying to come up with a name for a speed crocheting death metal night. Maybe we'll take that offline and I'll drop it in some comments somewhere. Think of a name for it. But you're right. I mean,
threaded shred.
We're more connected than ever. Yet we're further apart. So macro, we can find those people with the same interests, but we're still stuck behind the screen. Yeah. Work is shifting and changing, but then factor in all those other anxiety-inducing factors like return to office, things like that. Our world's turning upside down again. And then there's the expectation of either being a parent or being a husband or brother. All those kind of traditional structures and tropes are still there. They're being chipped away at. But yeah, it still needs to be worked through. Like I know someone who works in construction, and he talks about his days on site and everything. And this person has got some strong mental health issues himself. And then he talks about what life's like, and I just thought is there no change? Is there, is it just still loads of guys on a site, reading the Sun and effing and jeffing all over the place? That high testosterone environment. Obviously, that's an extreme example, and it'd be a bit churlish just to say, let's have a on-site counsellor or something. But yeah, these are the things, the pillars that we have to break down. You talk about toxic masculinity. I think that's a really strong conversation that's been happening. But it exists, and we can't wipe out our familial history or our community's history of how they did it. We can't blame them anymore because it is what it is. But we don't have to accept it as our truth. So it's up to us, for our kids, for our younger colleagues, anyone who's kind of come through that by any degree, to change the outcomes and change the way we think, speak, love, laugh, everything.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, Gary. Couldn't agree more, mate. So let's, with that as our key performance indicator for the success of this particular episode, let's turn to your own mental health journey. So what I want to understand is, how has your relationship with your own mental health evolved over time? And for the purposes of answering this one, it's completely up to you how much you say, what you talk about, and how far back you want to go. For some people, it's a specific thing that happened 3 years ago that was the trigger. For other people, it's rooted in childhood and relationships that go back decades. So it's entirely up to you. So you start where you want to start, mate.
Well, I consider myself to have been very reflective, even from like kind of teenage years, although it was a very chaotic, messy kind of reflection, more loud voice in my head than anything. School was challenging for me because now I know I had undiagnosed ADHD. There's things I liked. I did really well at English, unsurprisingly. And it was the 80s. So it was a very cool era. So got into hip hop and everything else, and enduring love and music and everything else. That kept me sane. But school was tricky. I always felt like an outsider. It was all the usual kind of ADHD traits. I'm not going to list them here. It's challenging to make friendships. Always felt like I didn't fit, that everyone else was sorted, and just more confident and easy. And it did feel like I had a constant dialogue going on in my head. Factor in the kind of negative criticism from school and directed towards yourself, which is not, some people say it's a recognized trait or not, called RSD, RDS, rejection dysphoria syndrome. This high level of criticism you've got of yourself, or perceived criticism from others. That kind of carried through. So even from quite a youngish age, there were challenges there. And when I came out of school, and then I went, I had a year out doing some work, enrolled on a local IT course because, couldn't sit around the house all day. Get out, do something. And then I redid my GCSEs, and then I did my A-levels. And this is a pattern of delays, doing stuff later, which is kind of part of what it is. And then eventually I got to university, and it was then that I felt that I was actually kind of not reinventing myself, but actually accepting myself a bit more, because I'd made the decisions myself to go to university. I wanted to get into film, so I studied film and TV. But after, and I got into partying quite a lot when I was there, because 93 to 96 was an amazing era for dance music. Everything from the Prodigy to Jungle. My gosh, it was fun. So the academic life suffered a bit, but it was a valuable life experience. And I had some peace there. But when I came out and I had to get a job, that's when everything started to kind of grow and rumble on. Everyone else was going into jobs. They had kind of a career path sorted. I carried in a similar vein to what I had been like, working just for money. I had no idea what I wanted to do, what I was good at, fell into things. So that work, life, career, I got sacked from jobs. I was let go. Yeah, didn't have a clue. And basically, fast forward to 2012. I'd met my now wife by then. She's an inspiration. So I decided I'll go into teaching. And I was a TA for years, and I was on a governing body for 10 years. I struggled there with the paperwork. There was an amazing chair of governors that supported me every month with all the paperwork and meetings. But I still felt like I wasn't secure in myself. Like, why can't I organize myself? Why am I late to everything? You know, these questions are constant. And the anxiety as I got older, 30, 40, just built up. And the relationship I was in, still am in, became more challenging because I was frustrated and angry and I had a sharp tongue. So I thought I wanted to be a teacher. It didn't happen. And then I fell into copywriting. And it was the same year I became a dad at 40. And we had a flat and I felt like a grown up at last. But all the symptoms and negative traits that went with it, those years and decades of regret didn't just kind of slide away now that, I know what I'm doing in life. It was a different lens because I had more of a kind of nostalgic regret instead of a burning kind of pain that, if I'd have done this earlier, I could be this, I could be more successful. But you can't think like that. You wind up causing yourself more harm than good. So fast forward a little bit longer, copywriting career took a while to get off. I wound up getting on some good long-term contracts. The reason why I didn't go into it before is because I didn't know it was a job and I didn't know that I was good at it. So it's kind of by luck that I fell into it. And my family would always say something, why don't you write? You can write. I'm like, I've never written. How the fuck do you know? Why are you telling me to write? So when I actually had the chance, I found it the easiest thing in the world. I mean, we've talked, banter, everything else. That is what I'm like online. That is my personality. You get all the culture coming through me. You get the love of language. But what I did learn in the early days of my career, which was quite a steep one, is to how to apply that to business. I learned about business, that structure, which I was lacking and I've never been exposed to. So that was a real solid grounding. And then the pandemic hit, and I went perm with the agency I was at and come out the other side. But during the pandemic, I started the process with the NHS to get a diagnosis because my wife, who'd been a class teacher, senior leadership, interim deputy head, she's constantly looking to learn and expand her skill set, not for climbing a ladder, but because she's emotionally invested. She did a SEN course, and those years of frustration and kind of managing me from afar in a relationship safely, but with pressure, the light bulb started to kind of go, hang on a sec. let's think about ADHD. Because she was doing some research on it and stuff. And then started the diagnosis process. Took a couple of years. And our son was at school by then. So we got our diagnoses at the same time. And we started medication at the same time, about a year ago. So the parallel journey between me and my son, he does not have any of the anxiety that I've had for decades. I've carried around with me, part of that journey as well, there was gambling, there was stimulants. There's all the stuff, and I know it's just chasing dopamine now, and I can manage it and I understand it and recognize it, but I had no idea why I was being potentially self-destructive. Didn't understand it. So when I got that diagnosis, it changed. I'm unapologetically neurodiverse now, right? I live and breathe it. Might as well get a badge. But what happens is you wind up gravitating towards people, or they recognize something. But the very fact that I've got it in my bio on LinkedIn means that people are more receptive to it. Not me necessarily, but I had more than a few people say, "I love the fact that you put it out there." And it hasn't solved all the anxiety, but I don't have any regret anymore about being 52 and only just having a career and getting sorted. I can't think like that. So that's why now I have optimism, because I still feel like in my head I'm 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting a career that I'm still hungry for. And I've said this to people, is that if I'd have been a copywriter in the 90s or noughts, I'd be jaded as fuck by now. I would have given it up. I wouldn't want to be a CD. I want to create. I want to write. I don't want to manage people. But going back to when I was working full time, and I was going through that process, I would slowly tell people about what's going on. And I think full circle, this comes back to what we're talking about, right? My anxiety and a lot of my mental health issues stem from undiagnosed ADHD. There are other external factors as well that kind of compound it. But actually, when I was working, I explored it and I got a diagnosis, and I started talking to colleagues because I kept dropping the ball on things. I didn't understand how these processes worked, acronyms, the language. Other people seem to be fluent in it. So I need help. And I started to ask for help. I'm like, I'm really sorry. This Figma file has got like 20 pages. Where do I need to go again? Where do I need to just do my bit? And I was really lucky that there are some amazingly supportive colleagues who I still love dearly and are friends with. But neurodiversity aside, this is about asking for help in general, having the guts to do that. And I think as I've grown more as a person, I've become more accepting of myself, those kind of layers of complexity fall away. And without sounding enlightened like a fucking guru on a mountain, the more self-awareness you have, the more easier it is to bring people into your sphere, to open up. But it's can be a tortured journey. So yeah, it's finding the right people to talk to confide in, whatever your problem is. All these expectations around work and performing, it doesn't suit me. It's never suited me. I've given it a go. Freelance life is for me. Although, if I found the right home, the right agency, culture and values, kept me busy with work, understood who I am and how I worked, that'd be gold. They can keep me till I can't work anymore. I don't plan to move anywhere. You get loyalty and brand advocacy.
Yeah.
I don't hop around, But yeah, I understand how difficult it is for people who aren't facing up to things or who aren't necessarily self-aware and are bearing it either psychologically or using anything to mask or medicate yourself, which look like societal norms. But actually, when if someone's drinking on their own on a Friday night, getting passed out drunk, and they're not talking to anyone about it, then there's an issue. That's just an example I made off the top of my head, but it's To wrap that bit up, it's about finding a person to start talking to. It's as simple as that. Someone you trust, someone you love, someone you feel confident won't betray your confidence. And not everyone kind of looks at friends and family like that until they have to or need to.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say, and I completely agree with that, is you don't wait until you think you've found the perfect person before you do start talking. I think if you're willing to go through a bit of trial and error, it will help you get there much quicker. So, I've
100%.
when I said earlier on that I basically, when someone asks me how I'm doing, I'll answer it honestly. I've got that wrong in the past. I don't regret it.
Yeah. But why do you say that? Why is it wrong from your perspective, or how it was received?
How it was received, I haven't kind of necessarily thought about the context in
Okay.
but actually making those misjudgments rather than mistakes, has helped,
Yeah.
with so many things. And I say this, it's interesting, the phrase you used earlier that I wrote down was rejection dysphoria syndrome.
Mm.
I'm a covering clinical perfectionist. So, that's the first time I've heard that phrase, but I can very much relate to it.
Yeah, 100%. But even I think in the SEN community, because and I've had this conversation with my wife, because it's not recognised by the NHS or official bodies. If you watch someone like Alex Partridge talk, he talks about it at length. There's an amazing ADHD coach on LinkedIn called Leanne Maskell, who is just fighting the fight every day and bringing awareness to the perception of it, what's relevant, what the developments are. So there's a lot of education going on, even for those in the middle of it, like ourselves. And every little kind of bit of information, and you can be in danger of defining yourself by what you read. Same as anyone, right? Believe the news, whatever you want. But I think that need for clarity and insight doesn't stop. And we're at a point now, whether it's neurodiversity or men's mental health or mental health in general, is yes, you can listen to a lot of people, you can cherry pick who you listen to. But the point is, there is information out there. The NHS, there are, as we've talked about, on a macro level, groups, there are individuals, there is commentary, there are events. It's just, I suppose, whether you're exposed to it or not. I put myself in that space, like when I was at work, going through my own thing, and then I sought out these business groups and had brilliant conversations. But if you're not looking for it, you don't know it's there, right?
No.
Once you do start looking, and this is what we're talking about, that initial thought to break through and actually seek help, then there's a whole world to cherry pick of information, voices, that you just have to work out who to trust or not.
Yeah, I completely agree. So on that point, let's go on to our fourth question then, because I feel like we're right on the cusp of this in the natural flow of the conversation, and that is, along your journey, what have been the key light bulb moments? And the key light bulb moments for me, I would define them as the points at which you've realized that there is something that you need to start doing more of, or something that you need to stop doing that is really going to contribute to your general well-being.
That's a very good question. And I knew it was coming, but hearing it out loud, it's a very good question. Light bulb moments. As I said, with kind of decades under my belt of mental health in varying degrees of, I don't know, severity is the right word. But if I move past the employment bit, and if I look at relationships and that anger and frustration and not knowing myself and being able to work that out, The light bulb moment for me is when I knew that I was in danger of losing the best relationship I was ever going to have. And I went to the doctor and I did CBT. This was years before my diagnosis. I was very cocky. There was there's an NHS junior doctor. I thought I was smarter than him. So it didn't last that long. Um, and, try exercise, try this. Eventually, I thought something had to give. So around the time of the diagnosis journey, I explored medication and I went to the doctor and I explained the impact it was on my life. And they put me on sertraline, which is the kind of one size fits all, it seems, anecdotally, from anyone who has any anxiety issues across the country. I know it doesn't work for everyone and not everyone's prescribed it, but as someone who's quite physiologically tuned into themselves, let's put it that way, it's pretty instant. So that was a light bulb moment for me is, okay, nothing I've done is changing. I'm more self-aware, but I'm not changing. I recognize what the negative bits are, and I need to find a way to iron it out, because for all the will in the world, with someone who's as close to you and knows you inside out, probably better than yourself, there's that lack of impartiality, and you need to maybe go to an external source to work on it, which is why the NHS is so brilliant. So yeah, started on that, and it started ironing things out. It was better, and I got my diagnosis. And professionally, things were still up and down. And then I started on medication earlier this year. So light bulb moments are a relationship almost irrevocably breaking down. I think there may have been a point where I just burst into tears on my own, and I just thought, this is it. I need to do something to not fix this, but to work with it, because I think if you push it down, and this is for anyone, like neurodiverse or otherwise, if you push it down, it will come back up when you least expect it.
Yeah.
And it can be any kind of trigger. There was a moment earlier this year when I went for a walk in the park, Richmond Park, and I was talking to someone I'd been connected with on LinkedIn, one called Chloe Link. We had a couple of brilliant conversations, very open, gravitate towards each other. And I was in the park, and I was listening to a new round tune come on. There was a lyric in there, and I can't remember what it was, and I just burst into tears because I thought, I'm not managing my feelings around my current work situation. And I told Chloe about this, and she just totally wrapped me in nice words and empathized, and we compared notes. And even if it's someone online, having someone to reach out to in an instant, I think, is really important. We've talked about identifying the right people. It's a bit easier for me now because I get to be authentic 100%. I'm not hiding anything anymore. I understand things better. The medication's helping me. I'm meeting people 100% as I am, the best version I am of me at this moment in time. So I think find the right people, but also maybe create a network, or this is trust and confidence, is it needs to be quite instant. My feelings rose up really quickly. I acknowledged them, and then I reached out to someone I could talk to, and I felt a lot better. And it's a process. The more you push down, the more it will come up, and the harder it will be. So yeah, the moral of that story is don't sit on it, because it can fucking ruin your life, and it'll be toxic as hell. It can actually cause physical complaints. Stress, we know about. I've also got an inflammatory condition, which I've had for 20 years, bad back, everything else. There's research suggesting it's linked to neurodiversity and ADHD. Or it could be because I've been sat in a chair for 20 years typing at a keyboard, or.
Yeah.
But that stress, emotional or otherwise, manifests itself physically. So if you're feeling sick, it may be because of your mental health. You know, if something's going wrong in your body that's not happened before, it's probably because of your mental health.
Well, on a like really basic level, I can see how when I'm struggling with my mental health, just the energy levels gone.
Oh,
If you feel physically exhausted, despite the fact you've
yeah.
done nothing,
Yes.
so the logic that there could be other physical manifestations that are attributable to what's going on between your ears is
100%. It carrying around negative energy or berating yourself or being stuck in your head, that level of mental energy used is phenomenal. It's draining. It's physically draining to be inside your head. I mean, there have been days when I've been working on projects, where it's a tight deadline or not, I've just been really productive. And by the end of it, I've been sat down most of the time, but I've used my brain to hell, and I'm mentally and physically exhausted.
So you talked about that kind of the kind of the psychological work physically exhausting you, which I can completely relate to. But you also said something right at the start of this conversation about medication and the fact that you are on a new medication now than when you started medication. I think, again, if you're up for it, I think it'd be really interesting to kind of understand what the difference is pre-medication and post-medication for you in terms of what you notice about that difference, but also what you notice now that you've been on medication and you've switched to a different type. How does that experience play out for you?
It's a good question. As I've hinted at, I am quite in tune with my body and the effects of things on my mind and body. So when I started taking sertraline, it was calm straight away. I just felt calmer. For decades, I've just had noise in my head, but it was my own voice, and it was just flitting around. And the physical manifestation of that is lack of focus, not finishing a task, spin around on the spot like a dog, like just ridiculous. So the sertraline just calmed my mood as well. So I mean, I was very receptive to it. When I got my diagnosis, I thought, brilliant. I'm 50 years old. I've got coping strategies. I don't need it. I do, actually. So in the subsequent 2 years, professionally, going back a beat, I've worked with some amazing people who are very considerate and understanding. And once I was able to articulate my challenges, and this is more in a kind of professional setting, it's a bit easier on myself. But it is still happening in my freelance life as well. I tend to over deliver creatively. But I've worked with some amazing people who help rein that in for me. They're like, okay, right, you've kind of gone a bit left over here. Let's tighten it up here. But that comes with kind of knowing me.
Yeah.
So it's helped in that respect. It's helped calm me out. Still very excitable. But when I started on the ADHD medication, it was kind of around the same time as my son. So again, there's that direct parallel of the same journey that we're on. And he started taking it, and we didn't see much of a difference. So what they do is they increase the dosage. Sounds very threatening, but it isn't. It's very well managed from my experience. So for me, when I did my first level of ADHD meds, it's all a bit jittery, all a bit, I could feel the physical symptoms. And the ADHD prescription nurse, was just brilliant. We had an amazing conversation. I missed some of her instructions, and she'd given me the next dose already to go up as part of what's called, and this is a word I learned, titration. It's a good word of the day. And last week, I was supposed to send a message a week before saying, right, okay, it's going to run out. And I was panicking because I couldn't get through to them. And she's like, "Oh, you're lucky I'm here today." And I said, "But I can't get the 20 milligrams." She said, "You're supposed to be on the 30. We're supposed to be trying the one you've already got, not staying on that other one forever." I was like, "Oh, okay." It makes it a bit clearer. So a few days in, instantly, it's like having 5 double espressos all at once. My mind's clearer, but some of the physical symptoms like dry mouth, bit of a jaw clench, everything else, it started to abate just before our call this morning. So I was up at 5:30, just awake. Don't know whether it was because of that or not, but because I am in tune, I thought, right, do I do this with Dan today? Am I going to be a jittery mess? Am I going to be able to get my words out? I've already drunk 2 bottles of water, but you should anyway. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I think right now at this point, I mean, I'm a rattling pillbox anyway, right? For the inflammatory condition as well. They've given me, what is it, meprazole, sertraline, ectorococcine, just an NHS dictionary, anti-inflammatory conditions, and I'm adding kind of ginger and turmeric as well. So every morning. And for someone who struggled with routine for most of his life, this was probably the hardest thing to embed, but it's now just a way of life, really.
Wow.
There you go.
I mean, that does feel transformative.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. So just to go back a sec, the sertraline conversation, as I said, I'm quite out there and everything else. I didn't shout about it, but I said, look, this is helping me. Spoke to a few colleagues. But in our family, we had, and this is very relevant to our conversation, my cousin committed suicide a couple of years ago, and it completely rocked all of us. And we've been a tight family growing up. We're all spread out. A lot of them were still living in Islington, where my parents were from. And we didn't get to see each other as much as we wanted. We all loved each other dearly, and we hung out when we were younger. And as I say, we went different areas. Essex, Kingston. So this came out of nowhere. But what it highlighted was the weight that my cousin was carrying around. I'm not going to go into it too much, just because my cousins and that aren't going to listen. 1 or 2 might. But my point is, before we went to the funeral and the service, we sat round outside in a pub in Essex, near to the funeral home, crematorium. And we just started talking openly, like, God, how are you doing? God, we don't check in on each other, stuff like that. And I opened the conversation. I said, well, I've been dealing with stuff for a few years. I've got my diagnosis. I'm on sertraline. And then slowly, my cousin, all of us are either on it or have been on it and have sorted whatever it was out. So, if that's another factor in an individual not looking for help is because they're anti-medication, or there's a stigma around it, or stigma around seeking medical help or professional help. Again, it just starts with a conversation, and you would be absolutely surprised at what your peers and those around you are going through, because they're just not sharing it with you.
Yeah.
And now we've got a WhatsApp group. Things are up and down, but we're closer than we ever were through adversity and tragedy. But it's just put a huge spotlight on everyone's mental health. And just to say, we're all male in this group. So it was huge. And we could try and unpick what happened to our cousin, but I think the bottom line is that he was shouldering what he perceived to be too much responsibility in carrying everyone, business and family and everything else. He's an incredibly hard worker and a beautifully intelligent, sincere guy. But the outward persona was, he's a gooner. He loves his family and friends, proper old school London vibes from Islington. But I think there was a sensitivity there that he never showed or couldn't show, even in unguarded moments, because, as I said, didn't get to see them that often. But just a magnetic person to be around, and we've seen it with Hollywood stars as well. Those surprises that happen, the public persona, the face of laughter and everything else. I mean, look at Robin Williams. Jeez, I mean, if it wasn't the coke that would have done him, it would have been something else eventually. But yeah, it's that first step in knowing something's wrong and reaching out. I don't think you or I can say it any simpler than that, Dan.
No. And actually, that is fifth question in here is, I'm going to invite you to try and find a different way of saying the same thing, I think. But the question here is, if somebody hears this and has been going through something similar, or feels like they've been going through a similar experience to some of the things that you've outlined, what is, in your experience, what is the most important thing that they can do? And I think it's abundantly clear that we're going to say, find that person to talk to. That's where everything begins. But are there other things that kind of leap out to you? Things that you perhaps you wish you'd done sooner, or things that you that you did?
It's all individual. So my life journey or experience is not going to be the same as the next person's. If we're talking professional support, self-awareness, medical history, family history, that it's going to be a very different route for everyone. You're right, is that you should talk to someone, but if you're not talking to someone already, then that's a huge barrier. So easy for me, less easy for someone else, maybe. Maybe there's a starting point of writing something down, not journaling, but some kind of exercise to get those thoughts out of your head. Or it might be you don't feel comfortable talking to someone and you might just find someone random to talk to. I don't mean on the street, but someone least expected to give you any criticism or feedback, or maybe there's a couple of layers between you. It's someone that maybe has been through it, or signified or hinted at that they've been through something themselves, or they are going through something. Like I said earlier, the kind of neurodiverse radar kicks in more and more. I don't even have to kind of look now, and it happens. But if you are going through something, I think it's natural for anyone to compare ourselves to others. That doesn't change. So maybe it's about looking for the signs of what you're going through in someone else. And if you can approach them or trust them, or they've talked about it or skirted around the subject, it's just basically a massive leap of faith into, breaking that emotional seal and conversational seal. So it's whether it's someone close to you, not close to you, or a professional. But yeah, point is, don't sit on it. Very simply.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And all of the sentiment that you've just outlined, I think, is absolutely spot on. Don't sit with it. Sit on it. No, actually, yeah, no, that's the kind of language of therapy, isn't it? Let's just sit with that for a second.
No. No, I've done sitting with it for decades. Thank you very much. It's a tough one to crack, isn't it? On an individual level, everything's out there that you could possibly want: information, advice, support. But it literally comes down to the individual. I mean, you've got initiatives like Talk Club, who are doing amazing things in that space. Even from a professional point of view, their branding and everything else is just phenomenal. And I think they're one of the organizations that have got a bigger platform. So it becomes more visible, and then you get more people talking about it. So, it's what is your definition of isolation? Is it you can't or won't talk to anyone? Is it you work from home, you don't literally talk to anyone each day, or your friends or your family you don't think are a viable or strong enough network? I think tackling men's mental health, yes, it starts with a conversation, but I think it's working out how to unisolate yourself. Is that, maybe it's not even a word, but yeah, to break out of your isolation of self first.
The phrase that keeps coming to my head when I think about this, my own journey, is, and it means something very different these days to what it would have meant 15 years ago. But I just want to get out of my head.
Yes.
You want to trying to find a way to kind of break through that cycle that your brain's running through, which is is not helpful. You can rationalize it until you're blue in the face. You kind of go, well, but I need to do something different to break the cycle. And it could be a tiny little thing that I do, or it could be a big thing that I do. If it's a tiny thing, chances are it's going to be one of several. It's going to be a cumulative impact. But it's the change, big or small, that is key to shifting out of that particular mindset and starting to move into a more helpful place.
Absolutely. Incredibly tough. As we said, people can rely on crutches. They might smoke, they might whatever. Eating, that's another thing that I've got a love-hate relationship with food. Better now. Always loved it, but in my less happier moments, I would use food to kind of punish myself and reward myself. It's really weird mixed bag of feelings. Similarly, alcohol as well. But then you've got people who like go for 10K runs every day. I'm just going to clear my head. And okay, it might not work for you. And yeah, you'll be physically healthy, but you're just pushing yourself to another further direction to cover it up. So it can look, a healthy mind can look like different things to different people. And it could be covered up. Oh, look, you're really healthy. You go to the gym, you exercise. But actually in here, fine, that's all running well. But is it doing enough to solve what's going on? Or is it a distraction?
Yeah, is it a coping mechanism, or is it actually part of the solution?
There
And
you go.
I think you need the coping mechanisms, but provided they're healthy coping mechanisms. I've done that myself. So I've run for 16, 17 years now. And I've been through phases. Sometimes I've got to run faster, otherwise it's not worth doing. I've got to run further, otherwise it's not worth doing. I've got to run more often, otherwise it's not worth doing. I've got to run to beat that time in that race. I've been through all of that shit. Probably for the last 2 years, I've been running because I actually like running.
There you go.
And
All those targets you just described are setting yourself up to potentially fail and kind of self-flagellate. Oh, I didn't achieve it.
Completely arbitrary.
Yeah, that's a good word.
And now I know that if I go for runs 4 times a week, but I'm just going out to do a run, it could be 5K, it could be 15K.
Better man than me.
Got 16, 17 years of experience of doing this now. I know, yes, physically it will make me better, keep me healthy, but it's rare that I actually enjoy it whilst I'm doing it. It's more the post-run feeling that is. So most of the time when I'm running, it's sort of bang neutral, right down the line. It's afterwards. It's like when I went out this morning. So Sunday, I ran a half marathon, a trail half marathon in the Forest of Dean. I was ruined after that. It was very
a big roast,
right. So yesterday I didn't do anything because legs were aching. Today I had to do a recovery run because guess what, Gary? I'm doing a half marathon this Sunday in Cardiff. That's how things have fallen, right? So I had to go out today to test the legs, but it was a recovery run. So I did 5K in my own time. And I'm thinking to myself, I haven't got a clear structured plan for this week. I just think doing a couple of runs will be fine.
That's good. Question I want to ask you though is, what do you think about? I mean, if I like walking, that's kind of a revelation in the last 5 years or so. Especially pandemic. Richmond Park on doorstep, stunning, and we had it to ourselves. No cyclists. But yeah, I listen to music or podcasts. I have it on all the time anyway, just as a kind of background stimulus, and it's what I enjoy. But when you're running, we're talking about thoughts and feelings, right? When you say neutral,
yeah,
is that like you're in some kind of Zen running state?
It happens. But the challenge is the more often you run, the further you have to run to get to that point, which is problematic. But it's beautiful when it does happen. You just completely zone out, and
wow.
I look down at my Garmin and go, "Hang on a minute, I've just done 3 miles and I've got no idea how I crossed any roads because I wasn't paying."
Oh, wow!
I mean,
that's phenomenal.
Knee-jerk reaction. I was paying attention because I didn't get run over, right? But when you kind of get into that zone, you're not thinking about anything, and it's wonderful. It's the best possible. It's what I would imagine it feels like if you can nail meditative states. It's lovely.
You went Terminator 2 on it.
Yeah. And it's
automaton. That's talking about the brain and the body's relationship with each other. The fact that you could do that's not something I will ever experience. It's just not my bag. But to actually hear that happen is that you can safely autopilot your body and mind to safely run across roads without consciously being aware of it and looking down at your watch, and you've done like 3 miles without just blinking. Yeah. That's phenomenal. That's a real level of some sort
The challenge is you have to run 7 miles to get you to that point, because the first 7 miles, your legs are aching, your lungs are rasping.
And you will get back.
But this is in all seriousness, this is why I stopped listening to stuff when I'm running. I realized, one, that I would rather hear the rasping of my own lungs, because when I can't hear that, that means that I've got into the flow of the run. And two, when you're not thinking about things, when you're not listening to stuff, the subconscious mind kicks in and you start thinking about things without even realizing you're thinking about them. So when I was really sort of stressed in corporate life and I went out for a run in a morning before work or on a weekend, inevitably at some point during that run, things would be coming into my head about work that I hadn't managed to work out yet and that I was stressed out. And it was during those runs that I would actually work out what the solution was to it. And that's
Nice.
amazing. The other
movement is a big, I think it's well documented, movement is a big enabler of creative and expressive thought. You know, move away from the desk. We're chained to them now. And I think it's maybe even Steve Jobs, you know, a change of, you move away from your desk, go for a walk, and ideas will come and thoughts will come.
Yeah.
You just unblock yourself.
You just got to stop thinking about it, and that's the best way to actually get the job done.
Exactly. Just going back a sec, whether this is the last point or not, you know, we've talked a lot about mental health and touched on the physical side of things and relationship. The only other advice I would give people is, if there are things going on in your life and you're not thinking about mental health, but you're doing other things maybe to excess, or you've got an unhealthy relationship with something, it could be porn, it could be food, it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be exercise, it could be anything. And I think, you know, from what you're saying here, if it's not fun or doesn't have benefits, but you're still doing it, then that's an indicator or a clue that something could be off, even if you are not consciously aware of it. Yeah. And if, you know, someone says something to you, oh yeah, you've been doing X, Y, and Z a bit too much, or, you know, without thinking about it, it may just take an external observation if you're not doing it yourself.
Yeah, and I think that sort of plays into what we were talking about earlier about, you know, it's one thing to go out and ask people to listen, but it's another thing altogether for you to actually be willing to hear what other people are saying, even if you haven't asked for it. And that doesn't mean that they're always right, you know.
Yeah.
Thanks for that advice that I didn't ask for. Now shut up. But sometimes people will observe things in you that you haven't realized yourself. And
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you don't want it to be gossip or inflammatory or antagonizing. You know, this is, again, going back to kind of trying to work out who the right person or network would be, is to take that advice or observation in good faith if you trust that person. I don't think they're just criticizing you. It's coming from a critical place, you know, which has been harder in the past for me because I've been my own worst critic. But yeah, it's just that little chink in the armor, the little bit of light creeping through the door if someone says something to you. You know, don't shut them down or bat it away. Just hesitate for a microsecond and just, you know, listen. If you're not listening to yourself, then if someone says something, then just take a beat to listen to them, and maybe it will start you on a different thought pathway.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Gary. That is a brilliant point at which to leave this particular chat. If somebody has heard your story through this and they'd like to get in contact with you, is that okay?
100%. I encourage it anyway. Yeah, in the last couple of years, I've just built my network on LinkedIn, but met some amazing people that I may not ever meet in real life. But we've had video calls and we've had written conversations, and I am quote unquote unapologetically me. And that includes being open, honest, transparent, and not lean into the jargon. I'm going to lean into me being a people person, Dan. I'm going to leave it there.
Excellent stuff. I will put obviously you'll be tagged in the post when it goes out, and I'll put your profile in the description as well. So whether you're listening to this on Spotify, watching it YouTube, check out the description to find Gary's contact details if you want to get in touch with him. Gary, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. I've loved this conversation. I think this is another invaluable contribution to the bank of chats that we're building through this podcast, so that they are there for people when they need to see them. So I really appreciate you getting involved with this. To our listeners, viewers, thank you for sticking with us on this one, and I hope you found a lot of value in the conversation and the advice and the experience that Gary shared. If you have, I would love it if you could share this episode across your own social media channels to let other people know about it, especially if you know somebody who you think has got very similar experiences or is going through something very similar to what Gary's talked about today. Send it to them directly, because it's only by putting it in front of those people directly that they can get the benefit of it. And anytime someone does that, we massively appreciate it. The other thing I'd love you to do, if you are feeling inclined, is if you're listening to this on one of the podcasting platforms, give us a review. Give us a review, because reviews and high star ratings, that helps to get this in front of more people. I've heard that it doesn't actually matter what you say in the review, although being nice and kind would be appreciated. It's more the number of stars that you want to allocate to it. So if you would be kind enough to go on to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're hearing this, bang a 5-star review in there. You're doing an extra little bit to help us get in front of more people. That's it for now. We will be back again very soon with another episode of Good Enough Chats. In the meantime, look after yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.